What's going on, guys? So today I'm going to be starting up a new project on this 1997 Ford E350 Econoline van. And the issue with this truck, I'm going to call it a truck because if you ask me, this thing is a truck. You'll see why in a minute. But it has a 2-inch receiver hitch on the back, and the cross member that really supports that thing is pretty well rotted out. So I'm pretty much going to have to build a custom hitch for it, which you need to be careful when you're doing these type of jobs, especially if you're kind of like a homebody like me and you're not doing this professionally, because when you start messing around with trailer hitches, if you don't build things to the standard that they need to be built, not heavy duty enough, and it so happens to break loose on the freeway and the trailer gets away and it kills somebody, I mean, if you're not insured, that's on you. So definitely pick and choose these projects very wisely. But I feel okay taking on this project because if you ask me, what was originally on the van isn't super heavy duty to begin with, and I plan to just beat the hell out of this thing, so I'm not too concerned. But anyway, a little bit about this van. Like I said, it's a 1997 Ford E350 Econoline van. But check this out. It's got locking hubs in the front. It's 4-wheel drive. So I mean, this was very custom for its time. And the other awesome feature about this van, believe it or not, it's got a 7.3 liter international diesel engine in it. Which I know some of you are saying, well, what's the big deal? There's a lot of diesel vans these days. But you know what, for 1997, this was a very rare option. I don't think I've ever seen another 7.3 in a van, around that time period. So if you ask me, this is an incredibly rare truck. The odometer stopped working at 200,000 miles from what the guy told me, and I believe it's on its second or third transmission. So this truck is a serious workhorse that just won't die. Wish they made trucks like that these days. But here's the hitch. As you can see, the cross member for this hitch is pretty much gone. There's a little bit of support in the top and the bottom there, but I don't really feel that comfortable just bracing this up. If you ask me, I think it needs a new hitch, and I think that's what I'm planning on doing at this point. Yeah, this thing's gone. So what I plan to do, I'll just try and talk about this quickly because I tend to talk a lot. So the main reason why I accepted this project is because the main C-channel frame, the main frame that runs the length of the chassis, is in good shape. It's just a little bit of surface rust, but this is still really thick stuff. So I plan to unbolt the original hitch which that comes off with 3 bolts on either side, and then this whole hitch will just drop out. Then what I plan to do is take some heavy duty angle or whatever I can find, and I'm gonna replicate this bracket, except I'm gonna extend it a little bit forward. I'd like to try and get 4 bolts on it, and it's also gonna extend a little bit past the original bracket. And the reason I need to make it extend past the original bracket is because if you look at this cross member that supports this 2-inch receiver, it's got a bow in it, and it'd be very hard for me to replicate that and keep the structural integrity of it as strong as one piece. So simply I plan to extend this angle out to here. We'll throw a straight piece of extremely heavy duty steel across. And I think I'm going to have to get a new hitch receiver because it would be a lot of work to cut this old one out of here, and probably a good idea to replace it anyway. So more or less that's what I have planned. There's also a cross member up in here that I may need to do something else with, because that was one of the concerns that the guy addressed to me, that it's been compromised, which from what I'm seeing on the video, it looks like it is compromised. I'm not sure how bad, and I'll have to see if I can do something with that too. So first thing, again, got to drop the hitch and find a way to drop the tire out of there. So before I unbolt this hitch off the truck, I want to ensure that when I install the new hitch that I get it in about the same spot. So I already know it's going to be going down the center line, but as for the space in between the bottom of the bumper to the hitch and how far countersunk it should be from the end of the bumper, I made this quick little cutout or gauge, whatever you want to call it, out of an old Kellogg's box, and pretty much conforms to exactly where the hitch rests right now. So when I'm putting the new one in there or about to weld it in there, this will give me a pretty good idea, or get me very close as to where I need to be. You know, I was going to unbolt this hitch, but for the amount of effort and wear and tear on the tools, and I don't plan to reuse those bolts anyway, I think it'd be a waste of time and energy. So my new plan is simply going to be to cut off those bolts with the torch. Alright, so I'm back out here working on this E350 hitch, and I made some pretty good progress. We're starting to get there. So I made the new brackets, and the new brackets are stronger in two senses, or in two ways, than the old brackets. So the first way is they're a little bit longer, and it's thicker material. The second way is the initial brackets only had 3 bolts, but there was a pre-existing hole in the frame back here, in which it's lined up right now. I just didn't throw a bolt in there, but this new bracket's going to have 8 bolts in total compared to the initial 6. So yeah, the way I manufactured these is, because I didn't have the right size angle, I took this really heavy duty C-channel, and with a plasma cutter I just cut out new pieces of heavy duty angle. And as for the bolt holes, I didn't want to drill them, so just simply marked them out with a template I'll show you in a minute. Took a plasma cutter and cut out those bolt holes, which it's not going to look as clean, but it's going to do the job just fine. So how I lined up on the new brackets where to cut out the bolt holes is I made this template with a thin piece of plywood, and I just simply marked out the holes on the new brackets and cut them out, and that was that. So what I'm doing right now is I'm trying to get a good idea of where the new hitch needs to be installed. So before I took the old hitch off, I made this little template, and this just gives me a good understanding of where the old hitch sat, how far back, and how high off this bumper it was, so I can get it fairly accurate. And the way this is going to be installed is I have this piece of 3-inch square tubing. I'm going to cut a square hole in there, square hole in this bracket, so it's going to be pin and slot construction, exactly the same as the old bracket. So as you can see, they cut out a hole in this bracket and this bracket, and then that has the ability to move back and forth. So yeah, that's going to be done. And then as for installing the hitch into this piece of 3-inch, same idea. It's pin and slot construction. So the construction of the old hitch, again, it just cut out a 2-inch square section in this 3-inch, and then the hitch, until I weld it up, will be able to slide back and forth, which is good for me because I can rough this in and have a little bit of play, move this from side to side. I'm going to be able to move this receiver in and out a little bit, and that will just help me fine-tune this to where it needs to be exactly. So yeah, that's enough jabbering. Just got to figure out where to cut these holes, and I'll check in with you in a little while. All right, camera is on. Don't go running away. You know, people can still see you in the video.
Shut up.
All right, let me put on my fireproof blanket. All right, so I'm about to cut this hole in this bracket. How do I word this? You know, it's just like filming a movie. Sometimes it takes a couple cuts to get it right. What's so funny about that? Alright, so I'm about to cut this hole in this bracket. I got it marked out. Got it marked out on the other side. This is going to be for that 3-inch tube that's going to go across here. So let's get cutting. Bit of fine tuning to do. I still have the 5S. I've been wanting to upgrade for a while.
Aww.
You know what? My 5S does just fine.
That's so cute.
It is cute.
My friend has that phone. I had that phone.
Alright, you ready? I don't really like the angle on that.
Can't help you.
Better.
Who are you asking? You or your camera?
A little bit of both.
Oh, okay.
A little bit of myself too. Don't you have a chicken to cook?
No. They just told me to put it in. That was it. I did my job. You should go check on it though.
Yeah, not my job. Oh, good.
So is that like not gonna fit now?
I hope it fits.
Oh, you poor thing.
I might fit it.
All that work for nothing.
No.
Is their camera still on?
Oh yeah.
Maybe.
Then we have this whole awkward conversation.
Are you taking a picture?
No, I'm taking a video. It's a video camera.
Oh, great.
Takes video.
Well, you can take pictures on... Take videos on regular cameras.
You don't necessarily come out that well. Alright, I got about 3 feet in between these two. 3 feet is 36 inches. I think I'm going to cut it at 40. So I'll give myself a little room for... Alright, so I got this piece of 3" here, and this is the 2" square hole that I cut out for the 2" receiver. Now, receiver doesn't go in there completely. I mean, it starts, but it won't go through all the way, and the reason is because we have a bit of slag from the plasma cutting in there, so I'm just going to take a chisel that out of there, and that should fit right in there. Okay, so I'm getting ready to start tacking things up here, and what I've done in order to get ready is I've cinched down the bolts on this side. I cinched down the bolts on that side too, but I loosened them up, and I'll tell you why. So in tightening these bolts, this bracket, as opposed to being perpendicular with the, I guess, the deck of this van, it was slightly bowed towards the hitch. And when I tighten down that bracket, it bows kind of outside or away from the center line of the truck. So what I believe had happened is at some point this van was towing a very heavy load, and for whatever reason it put a lot of pressure on the hitch in this direction, and I believe that very gently tweaked the frame. And now I could just weld everything up the way it is just fine, but I would prefer to make these brackets perpendicular to the bed of the van, or this center bar I'm going to weld across. I want to have a 90-degree angle with these brackets, if you kind of follow me. I don't want the brackets to be you know, at an obese angle as opposed to 90. It'd probably be more like 95 or something like that. So what I plan to do to correct this is I've already loosened up the bolts on this side. I need to loosen up the bolts on this side as well. And I have a piece of bar. And this is going to sound kind of strange, but what I plan to do is put the bar across these two brackets, take a ratchet strap underneath, and put some upward tension on that bar. And that's going to put a little bit of tension on both these brackets. And then I'm going to take a little framing square. I'm going to make a 90-degree angle with that bar that I have temporarily suspended up there. I'm going to tack that on both sides when I have them, you know, at a 90-degree angle, and that way this will hold a 90-degree angle. And then of course I'm going to slide that main center piece in there that's going to house the hitch, and then I'll tack that up. And once I get everything tacked up nicely, then we're going to bring it inside the shop and do all the finish welding on that, and weld up whatever we need, or weld up whatever else I need to weld on there, which I'm also going to have to weld up some spots for safety chains and such. So that's the plan. Let's see how it goes.